because we're supplying the weapons, we're supplying the money, and we're allowing this genocidal racist regime to continue to keep those people in the concentration camp and murder them. This would be exactly like allowing Hitler to keep killing and sending him the weapons, keep killing and sending him the weapons. And then saying, well, yeah, but we have aid trucks and Israel's not letting aid trucks. Of course it's not letting aid trucks. They're in the midst of a genocide. Why would they allow aid trucks to the place where they're trying to kill all the people? Well, it makes absolutely no sense.
Aid trucks? Couldn't aid trucks help people? No.
You don't need aid trucks. You need to dismantle the concentration camp and let people access the food and the water and the medical care that's out there.
I mean, aid trucks wouldn't hurt, right? It wouldn't hurt, right?
No.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Zees Political Arrow. I honest to God hope you bought your fire extinguisher, because things are about to get heated in our final installment between Miko Peled and Jake Newfield, who's the ever-vigilant defender of check-note systematic genocide. In today's face-off, Miko Peled is a man who doesn't just bring receipts, though. He delivers them with a sledgehammer. Mr. Jake clutches desperately, you'll see, to the same tired narratives in the past episodes, plays the role of apologist for Israel's indefensible actions. Miko isn't here to entertain excuses. He's here to call out the absurdity of pretending that walls and blockades are nothing or anything but instruments of oppression. As Jake fumbles through justifications, you'll see, Miko's gonna dismantle everything with surgical precision, exposing the horrifying realities that we are facing in 2025. I shall shut up. Have you guys enjoy, and as always, I'll put in my feedback and commentary throughout. Let's jump in.
Medical care that's out there.
I mean, aid trucks wouldn't hurt, right? It wouldn't hurt, right?
No, the whole concept is flawed. The whole idea that Israel should be allowed to be in a position to allow aid or not allow aid.
But it doesn't
People
mean that
in Palestine shouldn't need aid.
I agree.
That's the issue.
But aid trucks are so good.
No, the issue is that people are focusing on the aid trucks instead of focusing on liberating.
Yeah. What
the Jews in concentration camps needed was not just food and water. They needed to be liberated so they wouldn't be in concentration.
You want to focus on the primary, the causal.
Is always. Right now, there's a genocide going on. The issue of who killed this person, who killed that person, what's happened to this person, is it completely immaterial.
I see what you're saying.
It's completely immaterial. Are you okay with the fact that Israel is massacring people by the thousands, and now they've expanded it into Lebanon? Are you okay with that? It's our money. It's weapons that are coming from our country, and we're allowing it. And any American that does not stand up against this has Palestinian blood on their hands, including you and me. We're not doing enough. We're not doing enough. We are not doing enough. We're nowhere near doing enough. So I'm doing whatever I can. Some people are doing more, some people are doing less. But I'm telling you, it's our tax money.
Yeah. What about the other horrible things happening in the world? Do you also, I mean, should we also, put our time and energy towards that? Like all the evil, horrible things happening in Yemen and Syria.
Different people are doing, different people are dealing with different issues.
And your issues, I see.
My issue is Palestine.
For sure. And a lot of horrible things have happened. So I want to.
I don't know why you're bringing that up. Of course, there are horrible things happening in the world, and they need to be resolved.
Well,
but right now there's a genocide being happening.
No, the reason I bring it up is because
you and I are Jewish, and we're talking about this.
But
so I don't know why you're segueing.
No, I'm not trying to divert. No, trust me, I hate that tactic. By the way, when people try to say, "Oh, but what about these wars?"
Yeah,
I hate that. No, I'm not.
Okay,
No. I hate that tactic. I'm not doing that tactic. Let me explain why I said that. Is because you were trying to hold us morally accountable for what's happening in Gaza. Hold on, let me finish my point. And so my point, I'm not trying to divert to say, oh, what about Yemen? What about Sudan? I hate when people divert. My point was saying, I'm not morally responsible for what's happening in China or any of these countries, or in Palestine for that matter. I'm not diverting. I'm just saying
it's not the same thing. The weapons and the money are coming from here, this country, by elected officials that we voted for.
But we're not right. But I'm saying.
What do you mean we're not morally responsible? We voted for the people who are sending that money, and we're allowing it to happen. We're just, we're letting it happen. People are sitting in their homes.
Sorry, Ukraine. Sorry, better analogy. My point was that I'm as morally responsible for any. If the U.S. is involved in 3 different wars,
nothing that can compare to this right now. Nothing compares to this right now. There's an ongoing genocide on prime times happening as we sit here and speak. Children are dying from diseases that can be cured like with ointment.
Yeah.
And they're dying from it because Israel will not allow them access to the medical care they need because they're in a concentration camp.
And I think in the concentration,
or they're in a ghetto.
Let's talk about the concentration camp. So I think that this thing about Gaza, I have a question to ask, and so the pro-Israel argument would be, hey, look. There was a second intifada and people were doing suicide bombings in Israel. And if you were an Israeli citizen, you'd be like, holy cow, there's suicide bombings. Let's do whatever we can to stop this. Let's put up a wall and all this stuff.
Not whatever we can. Because if they did whatever they could, they would have ended the oppression, they would have ended the occupation, and they would have allowed the freedom the Palestinians are fighting for.
Before
that
the second,
was
what,
it.
So before the
It's not
blockade, before the blockade, what was the? And this is just take this.
The
as an
Gaza
honest
Strip has
question.
been a concentration camp since the 1950s.
Before the blockade, what did that entail? Honest question. Honest.
The Gaza
blanket.
Strip has been a concentration
I know,
camp
but
that
what-
Israel established in the early 1950s as a place to herd all the hundreds of thousands of refugees that they kicked out of southern
No, but
Palestine.
what constituted as a concentration before the blockade? What do you mean concentration camp? Like what do you
I
mean?
mean,
by
they're not allowed to leave. Their
Into
access to
Egypt.
their access to
or into Egypt or Israel? Yeah.
well, to Palestine, back to Palestine.
Well,
Their
but-
homes and land are in
But
Palestine.
Miko,
they're from
but
Palestine.
all of these points, like
They're
but-
from Palestine.
I know,
Israel
but-
created this
But I think it all
reality.
comes down to like you don't think that Israel should have been founded, and so we keep coming back to that point because the idea that they couldn't return to I would call it Israel.
If it was founded without creating these horrific crimes,
Yeah.
I don't know if there's a way to do that. But the fact is that these horrific crimes were established, were created, and that's why we have this issue. So no,
Yeah.
to say that they did everything they could to stop suicide bombings is not true.
Okay.
To do everything they want, to do everything means to liberate Palestine, to allow Palestinian refugees to return, to allow Palestinians to return to their homes, and
Yeah.
to allow Israelis and Palestinians to live in peace in a single democracy with equal rights. That's the way to end the violence. To say that to close people up in concentration camps and ghettos doesn't work. It's not what's going to solve the problem. And of course, October 7th demonstrated that to Israelis more than
I hope you don't
anything.
find this frustrating. My sincere question. This is a sincere question. I'm not trying to.
You
play
preempt
a
every
hypothet-
question with that.
Well,
but go ahead.
because it might sound like it's a rhetorical question, but I'm just that naive. Before the blockade, I was asking like what made it a concentration camp. I know they couldn't go back into their homeland. They couldn't go into Egypt.
Egypt is not relevant to this issue.
Right, but that is that.
Israel
But no,
is not
I'm
relevant
asking.
to this
No,
issue.
I'm asking.
It was-
That's what made it a concentration camp. Is that they couldn't return into.
They couldn't return. They didn't have access to the resources that they deserve.
Yeah,
These are
Well, they-
refugees that were left with nothing.
I thought
They were not allowed to go back and bring their food, to bring water, to bring their stuff. You know, what do you mean? They created the Gaza Strip as a concentration camp for Palestinian refugees. That's what it was created for. That's it. And Israel established it, and it's keeping it to this day the same way.
Yeah.
So rather than trying to figure out, well, they need the UN to bring them aid, and they need no, that's not what they need. They need liberation. The concentration camp needs to be dismantled. People should be allowed to go back to their homes, to their land, to access the resources, to access the medical care, the water, the food. That people in Palestine would die of hunger, would be starvation, lack of water, lack of hygiene, a lack of antibiotics. When 5-minute, 10-minute drive out of the Gaza Strip east in any direction, you have hospitals and food and everything you possibly need.
Yeah,
You know, that's what a concentration camp is.
I.
Never mind the fact that they're being bombed and they have nowhere to go.
Also, I just want to take a pause for a second. I appreciate you doing this so far with me. I don't know. What?
I mean,
I don't know. I don't know what you think of me so far, but you hear me talking.
this is pretty much what I was expecting.
Okay, good, because it's
It's
too
not
often.
necessarily a compliment.
It's
but
too
it's what I
often.
was
No.
expecting.
It's good
Yeah.
because you did this.
I've
willingly.
done interviews with people who are, I don't want to say like you. That doesn't
confused.
sound- That's
label me as.
I don't believe you're
confused.
confused. I don't believe you're
My
confused.
wife is Syrian Christian. For
I
what it's
don't
worth.
believe you're confused.
I'm married
that.
into a family with
that has nothing to do
Palestinians.
with anything. I don't believe you're confused. You're a smart guy. You see exactly what I see.
When I'll tell you something. When
What are you
I talk to
confused
Einat Wolf, I argue with her, and I feel it's whoever I.
well, of course, she's a nut.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not going to say the word, but she's, you know.
So Miko, let me ask you this, and we got
We
15.
can take a break if you want.
No,
I mean, we can take a little.
We got it. We're got a hard stop in 14 and a half minutes. So
My daughter's having fun. That's for sure. Look at her.
So Miko, I've been wanting to ask you this question. Miko, what do you think that Iran really means when they say death to America or death to the Jews or death to Israel? What do you
Well,
think they mean?
I don't know that Iran officially says this. I
Well,
think
they have. I mean,
people-
I've seen it. I can say in the videos. I can show you.
People in Iran say that. What I
No,
understand.
I've heard.
My understanding of Iranian policy is ending the apartheid state, dismantling the Zionist state, and allowing for the freedom of Palestinians, which is exactly what I
Okay.
say.
So that's your answer. You think they mean that?
The-
So
I-
why are
I-
they saying? Why don't you and I, if we want to solve this conflict, why don't we go work for PR in Iran and tell them, hey guys, you guys
I don't think
suck
Iran,
at your job because
Iran is
the-
not
the-
my problem.
But the phrase "death to America" that's kind of a not great phrase
Well,
if
that's-
you
can-
want to accomplish anything.
You can tell. You can take it up with them if you want.
Why don't you take it up with them? Because, but I was saying, like
Because,
your
that's-
cause is the Palestinian people,
And I believe, regardless of what slogan you happen to be quoting at any particular time, I believe that the Iranian objective is the same. It's the liberation of Palestine and the dismantling of the apartheid.
So why do they say death to America? Listen, just you don't want to
You can
concede
ask
anything.
them. Why are you asking me?
Why can't? Because whenever I try to criticize or condemn one of these groups, what you say is
Because
we
it's
shouldn't do
not
that. They
for-
don't have agency. They don't have
I didn't say
consciousness.
they don't have
They're
agency. I'm
oppressed.
saying I'm not responsible for what Iranians say or don't say. I just look at their actions and I reach the conclusions that I reach. You reach different
Why are
conclusions.
some groups beyond condemnation? Are people
I'm not
beyond?
saying that they're beyond
So
condemnation.
let's condemn
I
them.
am
That's a
not-
stupid phrase. Death to America is a stupid phrase. Let's just condemn it. It's easy.
Well, condemn it then. You
Okay.
want to condemn it?
Yeah,
Condemn it.
it's not a great.
Condemn whatever you want to condemn.
Compel it, everyone. Yeah.
You want to condemn?
Yeah.
Condemn. I don't know. Again,
Because
why-
by the way, if Israel
why-
said
why
death,
does-
if Israel chanted death to Palestinians,
they do all the time.
you wouldn't like that.
They do all the time.
And likewise, if Iran or
They do all the time.
what about
and they're
ha-
actually killing Palestinians wholesale. And we're sitting here talking about why Iran said this or the other. And again,
just
you're
think-
dragging the conversation to directions that are completely irrelevant. What slogan was said or not said by Iranians is really not the top. Shouldn't be the topic of this conversation. What's important is how we end the genocide.
I think you guys in the audience are more tempted pulling the pin off your fire extinguisher and extinguishing Jake here. I mean, bless his heart, he's taken us on an unexpected detour straight into the irrelevant, scenic route of Iran. It's like watching someone try to change the subject during a breakup. I know you're mad about cheating, but what about the time you forgot my birthday? Jake, my dude, we're talking about a genocide in Israel, and you're over here waving your hands about Iran like it's a magic trick to make the massacre disappear. Miko is laying down some hard truths about mass atrocities, and Jake, clutching at straws, suddenly thinks the audience will forget about the tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of lives being lost if he throws in a spicy dash of "but Iran." Newsflash, Jake, diverting to Iran doesn't absolve the atrocities or make them any less horrific. It's like arguing about the color of the flames while the house burns down. Focus, Jake. Just focus.
How we end the killing, how we make life better for Israelis as well as for Palestinians.
Were the
how we
attacks-
guarantee the safety and security of Israelis and Palestinians. And it's not more weapons,
Yeah.
and it's not supporting the Zionist state.
were the IDF attacks against the were the initial? I know how you feel about the war in Lebanon. Here's my question: were the initial IDF attacks blowing up the pagers and walkie-talkies? Were those targeted attacks, or were those war crime attacking civilian? What do you think?
These were acts of terrorism. They were even Leon Panetta said they were acts of terrorism. These were acts of terrorism.
Can you
that
name
were-
a more surgical attack than that?
I don't believe
ever?
Israel was in a position to attack anyone.
Okay, but can you name a more surgical attack than
I don't
blowing
care
up
if it's
a-
surgical or not surgical. Israel is not in a position to attack. Israel needs to be dismantled.
So okay, fine.
There's
If
nothing
you're-
that
wait, hold on.
Israeli violence.
So if you don't
has
care if it's
never-
surgical or not, why are you calling it a war crime? Why are you saying it's against the basis of your argument is you're saying
The
Israel
entire-
shouldn't exist, but my point is that it was surgical, it wasn't a war crime. You're saying it is a war crime, but you're saying I don't care if it's
I'm
surgical.
saying it's an act of terrorism. An act
How?
of terrorism.
On what basis are you saying it's not surgical and that it is targeting
What do you
civilians?
mean by surgical?
It was specifically you blew up a pager owned by a terrorist, and if there's someone next
By
to him,
who?
by a Hezbollah
Israel has
terrorist.
no position to designate other people as terrorists.
But
Israel is the perpetrator
first
of
of all-
terrorism.
first of all, the
I
US
reject
also
the
calls them
idea
terrorists. The
that
US
Hezbollah is a terrorist
They
organization.
were, but also Hezbollah was launching rockets at Israel. For the last
Yes,
12
of course
months.
they were. They were in support of their Palestinian brothers and
But
sisters.
if you're Israel, you're like,
If you're Israel, of course you do what you do. We know what Israel does.
Yeah.
If you're Israel, you are a violent, racist state, and you kill everything in sight.
you don't think Hezbollah is a terrorist
And
group?
you kill everything in sight. Hezbollah was established as a result of the 20-year occupation of southern Lebanon by Israel. There was no Lebanon in 1980, before that.
Yeah.
Israel, all of these organizations that people like to call terrorist organization would never have existed had it not been for what Israel's done.
But again, it's like,
And so finally, there was a
You're
power-
saying
there was a
if
s-
there's a high level cause, then people below that
I don't
high level
believe it's
cause
terrorism.
don't have human agency.
That's not what I said. I don't believe it's terrorism. I don't believe that fighting oppression
Well,
is
you're in
terrorism.
disagreement with the
I
Human
don't
Rights
believe.
Watch.
I don't believe. So I'm in disagreement with Human Rights Watch.
But I thought you trusted them.
That's not the point. They collect
What's the
data. It's
point?
not the same thing.
So what do we believe in?
Collecting
Who do we
data.
trust?
They're not a political organization. They collect data. It's not the same thing. Collecting data is not the same thing as having a political position.
I mean-
this is a political
Yeah.
issue. This is not a humanitarian issue. This is a political issue that has a political solution to it. Hezbollah would not have been established had it not been for the horrific
Maybe.
20-year occupation.
But that doesn't
Hamas
excuse their actions,
Or
but peop-
Fatah or none of these other. But there's nothing wrong with creating a resistance organization when you're being oppressed. If it wasn't for Hezbollah, Israel would still have been
Okay.
in southern Lebanon.
Let me concede as much as I can. If you're being oppressed,
Israel
you can
is
form
in the
resi-
wrong,
Yeah.
period.
So if you're being oppressed, you can form a resistance group, full stop. Okay.
Yeah, according to international
If-
law, you're permitted to
Full
use
stop.
any
I
means.
totally agree. Well, not
Okay.
any means. If
Yes,
you're
by any
if
means.
you're a
Yes, by any
resistance
means.
if you are a resistance group, you should not target civilians. Also, full stop. Those things can both be true. That's not a contradiction. People have agency.
People have agency, but
Right.
there is repercussions when one side wholesale kills civilians, the other side is going to retaliate. That's the reality.
Yeah, but it's not
There's no
smart.
but.
Yeah.
There's no but. When Israel murders thousands and thousands of civilians, there will be Israeli civilians killed by the other side. That's a given. There's nothing we can do. It's not a moral issue. It's a very simple
And
equation.
Fine. If you want to talk about causality, that's a given. That's a
That's a
given.
given.
When you kill thousands of Israeli civilians,
Nobody killed thousands of Israeli civilians.
when you kill Israeli civilians, Israel is going to what? Defend them. They're going to counterattack. If you want to talk about causality, there is your causality.
No, the source of the violence is Israel. The source of the occupation, the oppression is Israel.
But Miko, if we don't think about
The state of Israel is a crime. The state of Israel does not commit crimes. The state
but
of
does
Israel
that excuse
is a
any
crime.
action that happens that other people
It's
do?
not about excusing. It's about a reality that exists. Nobody's excused. It's not about excusing or not excusing.
It's an intractable issue.
When
if we don't
you
try to
are, when
condemn-
you are the oppressive genocidal regime, you will be paying a price. When my niece was killed, her mother said, "What did you expect? That they won't come out and kill civilians? We kill their children in their schools. We bomb their schools. We arrest and torture their brothers and sisters. You think they're not going to come and kill our civilians?
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
I wouldn't.
What
and
kind?
I would think they wouldn't come and kill.
Well,
civilians.
I don't know what you think or
Can
don't
I
think.
tell
but
you what I think they would do?
It doesn't
I
matter
think they
what
would
you
target
think.
military infrastructure. They'd free people from
Well, if
prisons.
they had the
They would try
ability
to broker a peace
Yeah.
agreement. There's so
A
many
peace
things they could
agreement
have
with
done.
who? A peace agreement with who?
With the
With
UN,
who?
with Israel, with the UN.
Really?
Yeah.
How many? Oh, come
But
on.
I'm telling you.
What are you talking about?
listen,
the
if
peace
you-
agreement with a genocidal racist regime is absurd. Why didn't they offer a peace agreement with Hitler?
If on October 6th, they said, Jake Newfield, you're elected in charge of Gaza. What do you want to do? I would have said,
no, you wouldn't. You
I
don't know
would've
what
said-
you'd have said.
I would have said, not
You
this.
don't know what you would have said.
I
The
wouldn't have said,
military
let's go
operation,
kill civilians.
That was not the objective of the operation.
What did the festival? Do you deny the festival?
Well, who killed who at the festival is still something that's being researched. And
why were the
and
Hamas people at the
I-
festival
I-
with shooting? They videotaped it.
Look.
This way, all these videotapes.
Look. If you care about the lives of Israelis, let me put it this way, okay? We have all these Israelis protesting. They want the hostages back. If they were serious about wanting the hostages back, they would demand all Palestinian prisoners be freed. They would demand an end on the siege on Gaza. They would demand an immediate end to the killing of Palestinians. That is what is going to allow
That's
the
a
freedom of
reasonable-
Palestinians. But they don't, and neither do you.
Let me try.
And
well, no,
neither do you.
I just said.
No, you
I've
don't.
been trying to concede
What
as
you
much as I
do-
can.
no.
Let me concede.
No,
Let me
you're
concede.
not.
I will concede right
Jake,
now.
Jake, you keep going back to saying
I don't like what
creating
Netanyahu is
asymmetry.
doing. I don't like what Netanyahu is doing.
Netanyahu is
I don't
not
like what the
issue.
government's doing.
The government is not the issue.
I think they're being
It's
too
the
aggressive.
state. No, you're missing out. You're going back to the same nonsense that you started with in the beginning. It is not about Netanyahu. It is not about this particular government. It is not about that. You're creating symmetry between what Palestinians are doing and what Israelis are doing. Israel is a massive war machine that has been engaged in genocide. Palestinians are barely surviving and trying to resist the best they can. Now, the vast majority of Palestinian resistance historically has been unarmed, like you were suggesting. Unarmed. Now, it's not for you or for me to tell Palestinians how to resist, so I want to make that clear. But the vast majority of Palestinian resistance has been unarmed. And when they tried unarmed resistance, for years, they've been murdered and killed, and their children have been arrested and tortured. And they still continue in the same villages in the West Bank that had this tradition of nonviolent resistance. And I was there from the very beginning when they were there. They were arrested and tortured. Their kids are being shot and killed and arrested and tortured. Nonviolent resistance against a violent, oppressive regime does not work. They're getting killed anyway. So what would you do? They're getting killed either way. Palestinians are being murdered whether they kill Israelis or whether they sleep in their beds. It makes no difference.
So
will they kill Israelis? Of course they're going to kill
so
Israelis.
on October 6th, I told
do
you what
I
happened.
want Israelis to die? Of course not. I don't want anybody to die. But we have to talk about a realistic solution. And the realistic solution is not to pretend that you can make peace with Israel. The realistic solution is to dismantle this apartheid state. And if you want to quote Amnesty, there's an Amnesty report about the apartheid state that makes it very clear that from the moment the state of Israel was established, the crime of apartheid has been perpetrated against the Palestinians in every direction. And if you want to end the suffering and the killing, you have to support the idea of a free democratic Palestine with equal rights. That's it.
So let's
not pretend that you can make peace
good,
with it.
But I want good leadership on both sides. I want there to be
The Palestinian leaders are either dead or in jail. Do you want to know how many Palestinian leaders
saying,
I can tell you? Israel's been assassinating and killing Palestinian leaders.
But what they did on October
decades.
7th wasn't really good leadership.
No, yes, it was. It was
You think
brilliant.
so?
They
They're killing
occupied. They liberated.
civilians?
They liberated almost half of Palestine, the southern half of Palestine. They managed to completely
The
paralyze
result
the
is that
apartheid
Palestine's
state.
destroyed because Gaza's destroyed.
The vengeance with Israel. You think Israel was not going to commit an attack and murder civilians anyway? The calculation the Palestinians have to make is not whether or not civilians are going to be killed, because that's granted.
But don't
that's
you, wait, hold on.
granted. Israel has been, hold on.
Yeah.
Israel has been committing massacres in Gaza since the Gaza Strip was established, since the early 1950s. This is nothing new. The numbers have increased. The weapons are more modern, more effective. But the idea of murdering civilians in Gaza has been part of Israeli strategy from the very beginning, from the 1950s.
How's everyone's popcorn looking? That's pretty much empty, but I guess right now would be a good time to go top her back up. Jake, buddy, at this point, watching you try to grasp these facts is like watching someone try to put on a jacket that's already on. Miko's been repeating it for the last 3 episodes I've been uploading. It's not rocket science, it's basic human rights, but somehow you're still twisting and turning, like you're trying to unlock the mystery of the universe with a bent pencil. Hopefully by the end of this episode, you'll have an epiphany. Or, at the very least, realize that the surgical strikes and war crimes aren't just buzzwords you can swap out like toppings on a pizza. Come on, Jake. We're rooting for you.
So Palestinians know it's a given. Civilians are going to die.
Of course,
what are they going to do with this?
45.
In October the 7th,
Yeah.
Palestinians came out. Palestinian fighters came out of one of the poorest, most oppressed regions in the world. A place where this is a luxury. This water bottle is a luxury.
Yeah.
Okay, and it has been for a very long time. They came out and they managed to shut down the apartheid state, to paralyze it completely. It's something that nobody was ever able to do. That is an accomplishment. You agree, you don't agree, you like, you don't like. That is an accomplishment. The military was nowhere to be found. The intelligence services were nowhere to be found. Israelis are terrified throughout the entire country. Nobody knew what the hell was going on for weeks. That is an accomplishment. You may not like it, you may not agree with it, but to come from where they came and to have that kind of a military operation,
45,000
Israeli generals were commending them. Now,
so it's a victory for them to get half of Gaza destroyed? That's a victory for them?
No, you're not going to blame that on them.
What?
No.
Wait, you're saying what they did was the right thing, but the consequence wasn't?
No,
So
the vengeance, the murderous vengeance of Israel, murdering tens of thousands of civilians, is not the responsibility of the Palestinians.
But
you
we-
cannot
but
put this. Wait a minute. You
we
just
know
said
that- we
something.
know that they knew that would
You
happen.
just said something, Jake, that you're gonna have to take responsibility for.
Okay.
The murder of tens of thousands, of what some estimates are approaching 200,000 civilians in the Gaza Strip, is not the responsibility of the Palestinians. It's the responsibility of the state of Israel. So the last hour here, you're trying to defend. And you're trying to explain to me that it has legitimacy because I have Jewish Ashkenazi DNA.
No,
that's
that's not why. It
nonsense.
has nothing to do with your
That's
DNA.
nonsense. There is no legitimacy to this.
No, I'm
and the
just-
murder of tens of thousands and the
Yeah.
injury of God knows how many more, and the suffering of children in ways that are unimaginable, and all of this happening minutes away from Israelis who live like this, minutes away from Israelis who live like this. That is not the fault of the Palestinians who came out to try to liberate their country and free their people. It's the responsibility of a vengeful gangster that was humiliated. That's what we saw. This was the response of a gangster that was humiliated and found the weakest victim they could find and murdered them by the tens of thousands, by the hundreds of thousands actually, and we're not stopping it.
Yeah.
Instead of saying how we stop it right now, we're talking about nonsense. In the past hour, at least half the stuff we talked about was absolute nonsense.
Justin, are we getting kicked out, or do we have 3 more minutes? Okay.
You know, that is complete nonsense. The only relevant thing, especially for guys that look like you and me, is how we stop it now. Not whether or not Jews had a right. Zionist means this, Zionist means that.
Yeah.
Zionism brought genocide to Palestine, and it must be dismantled. That's the only question that's important here. That's the only issue that needs to be discussed here. Nothing else. Anything else is completely irrelevant.
But aren't the details? I mean, I think it's important to discuss.
No,
the details.
these are the only details about right now. As the genocide is being
And
perpetrated,
I want to be
that
clear. I think you
You
and I
know,
are
it's like
aligned
saying,
more
well,
than-
National Socialism, is National Socialism really such a bad idea? I mean, if they didn't put the Jews in ovens and burn them, then then maybe it wasn't such a bad idea. I mean, maybe the initial idea of National Socialism, is not such a bad thing. I mean, they invented the Volkswagen. That's what you're talking about. That is what you are saying. That is what your conversation has been about.
My read of Zionism was not what
That's not the point. What your read of Zionism is irrelevant. What's important is the results of Zionism and what the Zionists have done for about 100 years. That's what's important. And where we are today is a result of that, and that needs to be dismantled and stopped.
By the way, I'm not disagreeing that what happened in Gaza is terrible. My point is...
No, you're blaming the Palestinians. You're saying the Palestinians who came on October 7th are responsible for that. That is absolutely grotesque.
You know what I'd be saying right now? You know what I'd be saying right now if I was in Gaza?
It's grotesque.
Let me say one thing.
You don't know what you'd be saying if you were in Gaza. Okay. You would not be. You would not. You do not know because you've never been in that position.
What I think. Here's what I'm saying now, sitting here. I see all the destruction in Gaza, and I say, "Oh, wow! I wish Israel didn't do that." And then I say, "Well, oh gosh, I also wish that Hamas didn't do what they did because Israel responded the way they did." We knew that was going to happen.
It was going to happen whether Hamas did.
You
what they did or not.
You think that Israel would have randomly gone into Gaza and killed 45,000
people? They've been doing
people?
it for
45,000, not 45,000 people.
They've been doing it for decades. And 2 years ago, let me tell you something. For years, I've been saying that this is coming.
Okay.
Now, the fact that they waited, that they did it when they did it, is immaterial. The murder and the genocide would have been taking place anyway.
Yeah.
The attacks on Palestinian people is nothing new. It didn't start on October the 7th or October the 8th. There's a history, particularly in Gaza, of massacres that began in the 1950s. Gaza is an eyesore, and you can't. And Israel is in a conundrum. You can't dismantle it and allow people back because we don't want the Arabs, the Palestinians back. You can't kill all of you. What are you going to do with them? You can't do nothing because people are saying, why do you have 2 million people in a concentration camp when you cramp to be a democracy? So somebody came out with the idea, let's murder them and say it's their fault. And that's exactly what you're repeating now. We're to murder them
causality.
and say that it's their fault because they're terrorists. No, that's not the causality. It's the other way around. There's no causality here. The murder of Palestinians
causality flows. There's causality.
Don't get philosophical with
I'm
me.
thirsty, so I drink, and then I have to pee, and then I'm thirsty again, so I drink.
Don't get cute with me.
But I'm saying we can't look at it.
Get cute
Miko,
with me.
if we look
That's
at a chain of 35 events, we only look at
the
one.
murder of Palestinians had nothing to do. Years ago, I've been saying this for years. Israel is going to go to Gaza and commit a massive
for no
massacre.
Reason? Just out of. Do you think? Okay, let me ask a question. October 8th, they wouldn't have done what they done had they not been. Let's say I'm not even blaming Hamas. I'm saying
they would have done it one way or the other.
As a supporter of Palestine, I wish Hamas hadn't done what they did because then Israel.
That's nonsense. That's nonsense. That's absolute nonsense. Again, you're blaming the victim for the consequences. You're blaming the wrong side. You're blaming the victim. That's what you're doing again, and you've been doing this for the last hour. You keep going back to blame the victim for what is happening to the victim.
No, it's
the murder of Palestinians in Gaza began in the 1950s. I've been saying this, I don't know how many times already. The weapons have improved and the numbers have grown. But this has been a trend. This has been part of Israeli strategy from the very beginning to try to reduce and mow the lawn. So this time they did it. And for years I've been saying this. We haven't seen anything yet. A friend of mine that was just murdered in Gaza, targeted, a journalist by the name of Wafa Al-Odaini. She was just about a week ago. She was killed with her 2 children and her husband. Their house was targeted. And so after she died, I was looking through WhatsApp, some of the conversations that we've had. And about, I don't know what it was, a year and a half or so ago, she wished me happy birthday. I wrote her back. She said, so what do you think is going to happen now? I said, there's a catastrophe upon us. There's going to be a huge catastrophe. If the international community does not intervene and stop Israel and dismantle this regime, there's going to be a catastrophe of unparalleled proportions. And this is what this is.
Yeah.
So the fact that they waited and this happened first or this happened second is not the issue. Palestinian resistance is one thing. Israeli genocide is another. And the Israeli genocide has to be stopped. And the way to stop it is to completely dismantle it. And don't go back again and say, yes, but it's their fault.
I'm not going to go back again.
Good.
I hope that you and Gideon Levy can get together and show me the way. We're going to wrap up in 30 seconds, Justin. Yeah, and I really appreciate this.
I appreciate you appreciate it, but you got to stop saying that you're naive and you're confused because I don't believe you are.
I'm actually not that well read on this.
That's not the point. It's not. You don't have to be read.
Well,
you're intelligent enough to see.
My whole life, you probably know what my upbringing was, right? I was given a narrative that I've now, since marrying into a Palestinian American family, I'm trying to work through and readjust. And this is my process of working through.
Well, that's good. And I appreciate you inviting me and doing this. But you're not, I don't believe that you're confused because there's nothing here to be confused about. You're a smart guy. There's nothing here to be confused about. This is very simple. It's not easy, but it's very simple. There's an injustice of the worst kind. There's a murder of civilians. There's a horrific genocide, and we know who's starting it and who's committing it. So stop legitimizing the state of Israel and stop legitimizing Zionism. Stop looking for excuses to legitimize it, because that is wrong. That makes you even more complicit.
Okay. Well, Miko, thank you.
You're welcome.
Let's shake hands.
Of
Let's
course.
shake hands. Thank you, Miko.
All right, folks, that's a wrap. But before closing the curtains, I'd like to take a moment to appreciate Miko's ironclad delivery. He came in here swinging like Muhammad Ali, dropping facts and taking names. And then there's our buddy Jake Newfield, who, bless his heart, still seems to be wrestling with the concept of gravity. Jake, my man, watching you process Miko's points is like watching someone trying to assemble IKEA's furniture without instructions. You got the pieces, but somehow the bookshelf's upside down and the screws are in your pocket. Miko laid it out clear as day. He brought the facts, the history, and even a water bottle analogy. But Jake, he's here trying to solve the Da Vinci Code. Come on, Jake. We were rooting for you. Maybe next time you crack the code. And for all of our viewers, if you enjoyed watching Miko's verbal smackdown on Jake's violent but slightly misguided attempts, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. This is Z from Zees Political Arrow, where we aim sharp and straight. Even if Jake's aim was off a bit today, we'll see you on the next one.
I mean, it's kind of like asking who would you trust to argue for white supremacy? Can you name somebody? Who would you trust to argue for fascism and apartheid?
Yeah.
Can you think of anyone?
No.